Women who left without a word. What hurt more, his silence or his upgrade? Story 1. I ghosted him on a Tuesday like it was self-care. Packed my stuff while he was at work, left my key on the counter, blocked him everywhere before my Uber even pulled away. I told myself I was choosing peace. Truth? I was choosing control. I wanted him to chase. I wanted the dramatic voicemail, the sad texts, the mutual friends reporting back that he was wrecked. The first week, I checked my phone like a gambler checks a slot machine. Nothing. Not even a, "Hey, are you alive?" No email. No Instagram request. No new number calling late at night. By week 2, I started inventing reasons. Maybe he was respecting my boundaries. Maybe he was too devastated to speak. Maybe his pride. Then I saw it. A photo in a mutual friend's story, him at a rooftop thing, wearing a suit that actually fit, hair trimmed, smile real. And beside him was this woman who looked like she'd never once cried in a bathroom stall. She had one hand on his chest like she belonged there. I felt heat crawl up my neck. I messaged my friend casual. "Who's that?" She replied, "That's Mara. She's cool. He seems really good, really good." 2 words that hit like a slap. I broke my own rule and unblocked him. My finger hovered over the chat box, shaking like I was about to touch a stove. I typed, "Hey." The message delivered. It stayed delivered. No typing bubble. No scene. Just my own humiliation glowing back at me. His silence hurt first because it meant he could live without the closure I thought I owned. But the upgrade? The upgrade hurt deeper because it made me realize he didn't just survive me. He improved. And I didn't even get the courtesy of being the villain in his story. Story 2. I left without a word because words would have turned me into the bad guy. If I said, "I'm not in love anymore," I'd have to watch his face crumble. If I said, "I feel bored," I'd sound shallow. So I chose the cleanest cruelty, disappearing. I expected anger. I expected him to blow up my sister's phone, to show up at my work, to post something bitter that everyone would screenshot for me. I wanted proof I mattered. Instead, he did the most infuriating thing possible. He went quiet. No vague sad songs. No indirect tweets. No mutual friends complaining that he was drinking too much. It was like I had been a temporary inconvenience he deleted from his calendar. 3 months later, my mom called and said, "I saw him at the market." I pretended I didn't care. "Oh? How is he?" She hesitated. "He looks different. Healthy." Also, he was with someone. My stomach sank before she even explained. My mom, who never notices anything, said, "She was lovely. She asked how I was. She knew your little brother's name." They laughed like they'd been laughing for a long time. That night I spiraled and did what I swore I wouldn't. I drove past his apartment. I know, pathetic. But I needed to see. His old car was gone. In the spot was a newer one, cleaner, like a reset. The windows upstairs were open. Warm light. Music. Not sad music. Happy, stupid, normal music. And then I heard it. His laugh. The exact laugh I used to pull out of him when we were alone. I stood there like a thief outside my own former life. The silence hurt because it erased my importance. But the upgrade hurt more because it wasn't just someone else. It was someone who fit into his world like I never did. Someone who brought him peace instead of chaos. I drove home with my hands numb on the wheel, realizing the truth. I didn't miss him the way you miss a person. I missed the version of myself who thought I could leave and still be the center of his universe. Story 3. I ghosted him after our biggest fight because I couldn't admit I was wrong. I had told him he was holding me back, and he just stared at me like I'd slapped him. So I ran, blocked, deleted, vanished. I told my friends he was emotionally unavailable. That made me sound brave. Days passed. Then weeks. I'd wake up with that jittery dread, expecting the "please talk to me" message. Nothing. At first it felt like winning, like I'd finally gotten the upper hand. Then I started hearing things. A coworker mentioned him casually. "Oh, I saw your ex on LinkedIn. He's at that company now. Big promotion." I laughed like I didn't care. My throat burned anyway. Then my cousin sent me a photo from a charity event. Him in a crisp shirt, standing next to a woman in a green dress. Both of them holding a check with a bunch of logos behind them. She looked polished, confident, like she belonged in that room. My stomach did that awful drop, like an elevator cable snapping. I stalked his profile from an old account. He'd cleaned it up. No messy quotes, no random memes. Just pictures with friends, hiking, volunteering, cooking. The man used to live off instant noodles when we dated. The worst part? He wasn't showing off. It didn't feel like a revenge parade. It felt like his actual life. I finally broke and emailed him from my work address because I'm a coward who needed a reply. I wrote something careful. I hope you're okay. I'm sorry for how I left. He replied the next day. 2 sentences. Thanks. I'm doing well. Wishing you the best. That was it. No anger. No questions. No why. His silence after I left hurt because it made me feel replaceable. But his upgrade, his calm, his glow-up, his new life, hurt because it proved something I never wanted to believe. Maybe I wasn't the reason he was stuck. Maybe I was the weight. Story 4. I vanished because I was sure he'd come after me. He always did. Whenever I pulled away, he pulled closer. I thought I had trained him. I left on purpose during a week when he was busy, so the first message would come late. I pictured him getting home, noticing the empty closet, panicking. The first night I slept with my phone on my chest like a heart monitor. I refreshed every 5 minutes. No missed calls. No texts. No, where are you? Day 2, I started getting annoyed. Day 3, I was furious. By day 5, I was terrified. I made up a fake concern and messaged his best friend. Has he said anything? Is he okay? His best friend replied, he's fine. Please don't do this. Please don't do this. Like I was the problem. 2 months later, I saw him at a coffee shop. I almost didn't recognize him. He'd lost weight, not in a sad way, in a I sleep at night way. He had this easy confidence, like someone had turned the lights back on inside him. And then she walked in. She wasn't a supermodel. She was worse. She looked normal. Like she paid her bills on time. Like she ate breakfast. Like she didn't weaponize affection. He stood up for her, held her chair, kissed her forehead like it was the most natural thing in the world. I watched from the corner like a ghost of his old life. She laughed, and he smiled so softly my chest hurt. The silence hurt because it meant my disappearing act didn't cause a dramatic collapse. But the upgrade hurt more because it wasn't flashy. It was stable. It was the kind of love I always claimed I wanted, except I didn't want it if it meant I couldn't control it. I left that cafe with my coffee untouched, realizing I hadn't broken his heart. I'd just freed it. Story 5. I left without a word because I was convinced he'd use any conversation to talk me out of it. He was calm in a way that made me feel guilty for being messy. So I chose the only way I knew how to be strong. Silence. I expected him to be loud in return. Angry. Dramatic. Something. When nothing came, I told myself he didn't care. That lie lasted until I ran into his sister at the gym. She looked me up and down like she was deciding whether to be polite. He didn't even ask us to hate you, she said, like it was an insult. I blinked. What? She shrugged. He said, she did what she thought she had to do. And then he went to therapy. Like, immediately. Therapy. Immediately. I felt my mouth go dry. A week later, I saw the upgrade with my own eyes. Not on social media, not through gossip. In real life, at a bookstore I used to drag him to. They were in the self-help section. He was holding 2 books, listening while she talked. And he looked peaceful, like his body wasn't bracing for impact. I turned away fast, heart pounding. But then I heard his voice behind me. Hey, I froze. Turned around slowly. He didn't look angry. He didn't look sad. He looked like someone meeting an old coworker. I'm glad you're okay, he said. I waited for the bite, the guilt trip, the speech. He just nodded once, like closing a file. Take care. And he walked back to her. That's when it hit me. His silence wasn't punishment. It was release. The upgrade wasn't revenge. It was proof he'd learned. I left that bookstore shaking because I realized something brutal. Sometimes the hardest part isn't being hated. It's being forgiven and forgotten at the same time. Story 6. I left in the most cowardly way. While he was on a double shift, I emptied the dresser, took my plants, and changed my number. No note. No explanation. I told myself it was mercy. No fight, no begging, no tears. The truth was uglier. I was terrified he'd stay calm and make me feel like the villain. For 2 days I waited for the storm. For him to call my sister. To email. To show up. Anything that proved I mattered enough to disrupt his life. Nothing. A week later, a small box arrived at my new place. No return address. Inside were my earrings, the hoodie I forgot, and a single receipt. He'd paid my phone off in full. No letter. No, we need to talk. Just closure I didn't ask for. I kept telling myself his silence meant he didn't care. Then I saw him again at a friend's engagement party months later. He didn't scan the room for me. Didn't stiffen. He looked rested. And beside him was a woman with paint on her hands like she'd come straight from making something real. She greeted people by name. She laughed without looking over her shoulder. When he introduced her, he didn't do that nervous, apologetic smile he used to do around my friends. He just looked proud. Steady. I realized the silence hurt because it wasn't punishment. It was permission. But the upgrade hurt worse because it wasn't flashy revenge. It was him choosing someone who didn't need him to prove his love by falling apart. Story 7. I ghosted him after I cheated. I know how that sounds. I told myself we were already dead, that it didn't count, that I was just escaping a relationship that made me feel invisible. So I vanished before he could ask questions I didn't want to answer. Blocked him. Blocked his mom. Blocked our friends. I expected rage. I expected him to expose me. I deserved it. Instead, he went quiet. Weeks later, I checked our shared cloud album from a laptop I'd forgotten was still logged in. The folder name had changed. Not to pain or trash like I deserved. He'd renamed it Old. Just old. Then a mutual friend posted a group photo from a hiking trip. He was there, smiling, and I almost didn't recognize him because his eyes looked clear. Someone commented, "Proud of you." Another wrote, "6 months sober and thriving." Sober. I didn't even know he had a problem. Or maybe I did and I chose not to see it. The upgrade didn't come as a girlfriend reveal. It came as him upgrading himself in ways I couldn't take credit for and couldn't sabotage. New job. New apartment. New friends. A calmness that made my chest tighten because it screamed, "I'm safe now." I finally sent a message from an old account. "I'm sorry. I didn't know how to face you," he replied in under an hour. "I hope you get help too." No hate. No questions. No opening. His silence hurt because it didn't let me pay my guilt off with drama. But his upgrade? That hurt like a verdict. Because it meant my disappearance wasn't the tragedy of his life. It was just the moment his life started getting better. Story 8. I left without a word because long distance made me feel like a liar. We were engaged, but every video call felt like a performance, and every "I miss you" felt like a line I was reading, not living. So I disappeared, changed my socials, moved cities, told myself it was kinder than letting it rot slowly. For a month, I held my breath waiting for him to break the silence. He didn't. Not even a single "Are you okay?" That was the part that made me furious. How dare he accept it? How dare he not chase the version of me I'd already abandoned? Then the upgrade hit me from a place I couldn't block. My aunt's Facebook. She posted photos from a small wedding in his hometown. People I recognized, decorations I used to talk about. The same stupid song we joked would be our first dance, and there he was. In a dark suit, eyes bright, holding hands with a woman who was visibly pregnant. My throat closed. Pregnant. Like he'd fast-forwarded into the life I assumed he was supposed to wait for me to decide I wanted. I zoomed in, looking for signs it was rushed or desperate. There weren't any. He looked like a man who'd stopped living on pause. His silence hurt first because it made my exit feel irrelevant. But the upgrade, his new family, his new certainty, hurt more because it exposed my secret fear. I didn't leave because I was brave. I left because I wasn't ready to grow up, and he didn't need me to become someone who was. Story 9. I ghosted him the night he told me, quietly, "I can't keep guessing what version of you I'll get." That sentence made me feel seen in a way I didn't want. So I ran. No goodbye. No explanation. I wanted him to regret saying it. I wanted him to panic. The next morning, I woke up to one text. 1. Okay, that was it. No punctuation drama. No please, just okay. It should have been a relief. It felt like a punch. I spent weeks spiraling, rewriting the story in my head so I could be the injured one. Then I ran into him at a gallery opening, of all places, because he never cared about art when we dated. He used to complain his feet hurt. Now he was there, wearing this simple, expensive-looking coat, holding a glass of wine like he belonged. And he was with someone who talked to him like he was a person, not a project. She wasn't clinging. She wasn't proving anything. She was just comfortable in her skin. When he saw me, he smiled politely, like you smile at someone who used to sit next to you in class. "Hey," he said. I waited for the coldness, the anger, the payoff. He introduced her. She shook my hand, warm and normal. Then he turned back to the painting like my existence didn't rearrange his night. His silence hurt because it took away the drama I thought I deserved. But his upgrade hurt more because it wasn't about her being prettier or richer. It was about him becoming someone I couldn't destabilize anymore. Story 10. I vanished because I thought he'd finally fight for me. We'd been stuck in the same loop. Me pulling away, him chasing, me returning like it proved something. So I went all in. No goodbye. I moved out while he was at the gym. I blocked him before he could even notice the empty closet. I expected fireworks. Instead, 2 days later, a courier rang my doorbell. A neatly taped box, my passport, my grandma's ring, my favorite book, even the stupid charger I always stole. On top was a printed label. Returned. Take care. No handwriting. No emotion. Clean. Professional. Like I was a transaction he'd closed. I hated him for that more than I can explain. 3 months later, the upgrade wasn't a new girlfriend post. It was the way everyone talked about him like he'd been reborn. My friend said, "He's different. He doesn't entertain chaos anymore." Then I saw it for myself. He hosted a small game night at our old place. I only knew because someone accidentally invited me in a group chat. And curiosity is a disease. I showed up late, heart in my throat. His apartment looked upgraded too. New furniture, plants, warm lighting. And there he was, laughing, calm, moving around the room like he was at home in his own life. A woman sat on the couch with her legs tucked under her, wearing his sweatshirt, talking with his friends like she'd always been there. He noticed me and didn't flinch. He just nodded once, acknowledgement, not invitation. I stood frozen, realizing the worst truth. His silence didn't mean he was hurt. It meant he was done. And his upgrade wasn't a weapon aimed at me. It was him finally choosing a life where I didn't get to be the main character. Story 11. I ghosted him because I was convinced he'd finally understand once I was gone. We'd been arguing about the same thing for months. Me saying I felt alone even when he was right there, him saying he was trying. I wanted a dramatic wake-up call. I wanted him to panic and promise to change. So I left while he was at his dad's house. Blocked him, blocked his friends, blocked his mom. I even deleted my old email like I was erasing evidence. 2 days later, a single message came through on my work chat, the one place I forgot. Got it. I won't bother you. I reread it until the words stopped making sense. Won't bother you, like I was a stranger who'd asked to be left alone in line at the grocery store. The silence after that was surgical. No posts, no calls, no flying monkeys. My friends didn't bring him up because there was nothing to report. Then the upgrade came in the most humiliating way. My landlord. We used to live together, and the landlord texted me by accident. "Hi, confirming the new tenant details for next month." His girlfriend already paid the deposit. His girlfriend already paid deposit. My brain kept snagging on already, like he'd been planning a future while I was still imagining him crawling back. A week later, I saw him in passing. He was carrying boxes, laughing with someone. No sadness, no bitterness. Just momentum. His silence hurt because it wasn't a tantrum, it was acceptance. But the upgrade hurt more because it showed me he didn't wait for explanations. He didn't need closure. He needed space, and I handed it to him like a gift. Story 12. I disappeared because I was ashamed. Not of him, of myself. I'd been picking fights, testing him, twisting everything into proof he didn't love me enough. When he finally stopped reacting, I panicked. So I ran before he could say, "I'm done." The first week felt like drowning in quiet. I kept unlocking my phone expecting his name to flash like a lifeline. Nothing. I told myself he was punishing me, that he was trying to win. Then I overheard 2 coworkers talking about a new guy at a partner company. They said his name and my stomach flipped. It was him. They were laughing about how kind he was, how he always brought snacks for the team, how he'd organized a fundraiser for someone's sick dog. Fundraiser. Snacks. Kind. All the words I'd stopped using for him because I'd turned him into my enemy. I looked him up and saw the upgrade in plain sight. Not a glamorous new girlfriend, but a whole new ecosystem. New city. New circles. New hobbies. The photos weren't flashy, just hikes, dinners, silly candid shots. He looked lighter. I finally sent a message from my sister's phone because mine was blocked. Pathetic, I know. Just, "Can we talk?" He replied, "I'd rather not. I'm in a good place." That was the upgrade. Not her, not money, not looks. A good place I no longer had access to. His silence hurt because it made me feel small. But his upgrade hurt more because it proved he wasn't the one breaking us the whole time. I was just too loud to hear it. Story 13. I left without a word because I thought I was saving both of us. He'd been dealing with grief after his mom died, and I didn't know how to stand next to that kind of pain. I felt useless. So I chose the selfish version of kindness. Disappearing. I expected him to be furious. Grief makes people loud, right? I expected him to call me names. To show up at my door. To demand answers. He didn't. Not one message. Not even a why. The silence made me feel like a monster and a nobody at the same time. And then the upgrade came, slowly, in fragments I couldn't unsee. A mutual friend mentioned he'd started running again. Another said he'd joined a support group. Someone else said he was cooking for his dad every Sunday. It was like he'd taken the hole in his life and built a routine around it, brick by brick. Months later, I saw him at a charity walk for cancer research. He was wearing the event shirt, holding a sign with his mom's name on it. Next to him was a woman handing out water bottles, speaking softly to him like she knew exactly where the sharp edges were. She didn't look like a replacement. She looked like a partner. I realized something that made my throat ache. His upgrade wasn't about moving on from me. It was about moving through the worst thing that ever happened to him. Without me. His silence hurt because it meant I wasn't essential to his healing. But the upgrade hurt more because it showed he found someone who could stand in the storm with him, while I had run at the first thunder. Story 14. I ghosted him because I was bored. There, I said it. He was safe. Predictable. Good. And I hated myself for how little that seemed to matter. So I left without a word because saying, "You're not exciting enough," would have made me sound cruel. I expected him to prove me wrong by begging, to make some grand gesture, to remind me I was desired. Instead, he went completely silent. For a while, I felt smug. Like, see? He didn't even care. I told my friends he was cold, that he never really loved me. Then I ran into him at a farmer's market and my story shattered in 1 second. He was there with a stroller. Not his baby, I realized quickly, his sister's kid. He was pushing it, buying strawberries, laughing with the vendor like he was a regular. He looked domestic, the exact kind of life I claimed I didn't want. And then she walked up, his upgrade. Not flashy, not intimidatingly perfect, just warm. She kissed his cheek and handed him a coffee, already knowing what he liked. He didn't look surprised. He looked cared for. I stood behind a stand of flowers like an idiot, watching him live the quiet life I'd abandoned because it wasn't dramatic enough. His silence hurt because it didn't feed my ego. But the upgrade hurt worse because it made me face the truth. I didn't leave because he lacked something. I left because I confused chaos with chemistry. And he upgraded into peace. Story 15. I vanished because I wanted the upper hand. Our relationship had become a power game. Who cared less? Who texted first? Who apologized? I was tired of feeling like I needed him more. So I ghosted him to flip the board. For a day, it felt amazing. Like I'd finally taken my dignity back. Then the silence stretched. No reaction. No chase. No please come back. My power move landed like a paper airplane in an empty room. I got desperate and did the thing everyone pretends they don't do. I made a fake profile and followed his friend group. I told myself it was checking in. That's when I saw the upgrade. And it wasn't romantic. It was social. He used to be the quiet one at parties, hovering near the wall while I performed. Now he was in every photo, centered, laughing, arms around people. He looked like someone who had been welcomed, not tolerated. And then came the girlfriend reveal, a candid shot at a bowling alley. He was mid-laugh, leaning toward a woman with messy hair and a huge grin. She wasn't posed. She wasn't curated. She looked like she made him forget to be guarded. I messaged him from my real account, heart racing. Can we talk? Minutes later, no, just that. One word, the exact kind of coldness I'd been trying to fake for months. His silence hurt because it exposed my bluff. But his upgrade hurt more because it wasn't aimed at hurting me. It was him stepping into a life where my games didn't matter anymore. And I'd built the door for him on my way out. Story 16. I left without a word the night the test turned positive, because the fear hit me harder than the joy. He'd been so excited about someday that I panicked at now. I told myself I needed space to think, but I didn't think. I ran, blocked him, packed a bag, stayed with a friend who promised not to judge. I expected him to blow up, to demand answers, to show up at the door with that stubborn tenderness that always made me fold. He didn't. 3 weeks passed in a silence so clean it felt like it had edges. Then I started bleeding. A quiet, brutal ending that didn't even feel real. I sat on a cold bathroom floor, shaking. And for the first time, I wanted him. Not as a boyfriend, but as the one person who knew my body like a home. I unblocked him and stared at the screen for an hour before typing, "I'm sorry." I deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally, I sent, "Can we talk?" Delivered. Nothing. I told myself he hated, that he'd erased me, that I deserved it. Months later, my cousin dragged me to a prenatal yoga class because she didn't want to go alone. I went to be supportive, to hide behind a mat and pretend life was normal. Halfway through, the door opened and I heard his laugh. I looked up and there he was, carrying a water bottle, holding a woman's hand. She was pregnant, glowing in that calm way that isn't about makeup, it's about safety. He didn't scan the room for me. He didn't tense. He just leaned down and kissed her temple like it was muscle memory. His silence hurt because it told me I couldn't summon him anymore. But the upgrade hurt worse, because it looked like the life I ran from finally found him anyway. Story 17. I ghosted him after the worst version of myself said the quiet part out loud. "You're ambitious, but You're not impressive. I said it because I was insecure and I needed him smaller so I could feel bigger. He just stared at, not angry, not pleading, just tired. That scared me more than any fight, so I ran the next morning. Blocked him. Told myself I was protecting my pride. I expected a counterattack. You never believed in me anyway. Something to prove he still cared enough to be messy. He gave me nothing. Absolute silence. A year later, I was scrolling at 2 a.m., and his name popped up on a recommended video. I clicked like it was a reflex. He was on a stage. Not a cheesy motivational speaker stage, an actual conference. The title card had his name, his company, his role. He looked different. Not richer, not flashier, just grounded, like a man who sleeps. When the camera panned, there was a woman in the front row laughing at something he said, eyes locked on him like she was proud, not anxious. When he finished, he stepped off stage and she hugged him so tight I felt it in my teeth. My hands went cold. I paused the video, zoomed in like it would change something. I finally messaged him, "Congratulations. You did it." The reply came hours later, one line, "Thanks. I hope you're well." No heat, no history, no opening. His silence hurt because it refused to argue with my old narrative. But his upgrade, his success, his peace, her pride, hurt more because it proved he didn't need my belief to become impressive. He just needed me gone. Story 18. I disappeared because I was convinced he'd pick me if I made him fight for it. We were in that toxic rhythm where love meant proving. I'd pull away, he'd chase, and I'd feel wanted. So I ghosted him to force a bigger chase. He didn't chase. A week in, I started checking his profile from a burner account, half angry, half desperate. Still nothing. No sad posts. No cryptic quotes. No missing you. Then my friend Lena texted me, "Please don't contact him." I stared at the message, confused. "What are you talking about?" Lena didn't answer. She just sent a screenshot. A group chat I wasn't in anymore. People were asking if he was okay. Someone wrote, "He finally stopped blaming himself." Another wrote, "He's going to therapy. He said he's done with push-pull. Therapy. Done." Those words felt like a door locking. And then I saw the upgrade on Lena's story. Him and Lena, sitting in a diner booth, her head on his shoulder, his hand on hers. My stomach turned inside out. Lena, who used to comfort me after every fight, who used to call him too good for this. Lena, who knew exactly how much I relied on the chase. I messaged her instantly, "Are you serious right now?" She replied, "He deserves quiet." I'm not apologizing for that. I went straight to him, typed paragraphs, deleted them, finally sent, "So that's it? You're just replacing me?" He answered once, "I'm not replacing you. I'm choosing peace." His silence hurt because it ended my game. But his upgrade hurt worse because it was someone who'd watched me destroy him and still had the audacity to love him gently, right in front of everyone. Story 19. I left without a word the day he proposed, publicly, in a restaurant with everyone watching. My brain went white. My throat closed. All I heard was the clinking of glasses and the pressure of 100 eyes waiting for me to say yes. I smiled. I nodded. I kissed him. Then I went to the bathroom and threw up. That night, I couldn't breathe in our apartment. The ring felt like a weight, not a promise. I didn't want to be someone's forever when I wasn't even sure who I was. So I did the cruelest thing. I vanished. Left the ring on the counter. No note. Just an empty space where I used to be. I expected him to rage, to show up at my parents' house, to demand the ring back, to call me a monster. He didn't. Weeks later, a mutual friend told me he'd taken time off work and didn't want to talk about it. Months later, I heard he'd moved. Then the upgrade hit me on a random Tuesday when I walked past a jewelry store window. He was inside, laughing with an employee, holding a ring box open for a woman beside him. She wasn't looking at the diamonds like she was afraid. She was grinning like she already knew the answer. He lifted his eyes, and for the first time since I left, he actually saw me. No shock, no anger, just a calm, closed expression that said, "Oh, you." He turned back to her without a word. His silence hurt because it meant I didn't get to explain my panic as something noble. But his upgrade hurt more because it showed he found someone who could stand in the spotlight with him, without needing an exit. Story 20. I ghosted him because my family never stopped calling him temporary. Different background, different everything. They smiled to his face and treated him like a phase behind my back. I hated them for it until I started hearing their voices in my own head. So I left quietly, changed my number, let him think I'd just evaporated. I expected him to fight through it, to prove he was serious, to show up at my door and make my family watch. He didn't. Nothing. Not even an email. I told myself he finally agreed with them, that he'd realized I wasn't worth the trouble. A year later, I went to a cousin's big family event and braced myself for the usual questions. The room was loud, warm, suffocating. I was halfway to the kitchen when I heard his name, spoken softly, respectfully, by my aunt. My blood went cold. I turned and there he was, standing near the doorway, dressed nicely, smiling like he belonged. And next to him was a woman from my community. Same language, same customs, laughing with his arm around her waist like it was natural. My cousin whispered, almost impressed, "He's marrying her. Everyone loves him. Everyone loves him." I stood frozen while my family, welcomed him with the warmth I'd begged them to show when he was with me. He spotted me across the room. For a second, his eyes flicked over me like a memory. Then he looked away. No confrontation. No explanation. Just silence so complete it felt like I'd never existed in his life at all. His silence hurt because it confirmed I didn't get to rewrite the ending. But his upgrade hurt more because it proved the cruelest thing. He wasn't temporary. I was. Story 21. I left without a word because I needed him to be the reason I stayed. And he wouldn't give me the speech I'd scripted in my head. He wasn't neglectful. He wasn't cruel. He was just steady. And somehow, steadiness made me feel trapped, like I'd already lived the next 10 years and it was all beige. So I disappeared, blocked him, moved in with a friend, posted vague new beginnings nonsense like that made it noble. The silence that followed was immediate and absolute. No, where are you? No, please. No mutuals reaching out on his behalf. It felt like falling off a bridge and realizing there's no splash because nobody watched you jump. 3 months later, I found out why. A coworker invited me to a small art show. I walked in and there he was, helping set up chairs. Not lurking awkwardly like he used to at events, but organizing, laughing, belonging. And then I saw the upgrade. A woman with clay under her nails, hands on his shoulders from behind like she'd done it 100 times. She kissed his cheek, then handed him a list. He glanced at it, nodded, and went to work. No ego, no performance, just teamwork. I stood there, invisible, realizing the thing that broke me wasn't his silence. It was the fact that his life didn't get louder when I left. It got fuller, like removing me made room for color. I went home and opened our old chat from a backup, my last message still sitting there, unsent. I deleted it. Not out of maturity, out of humiliation. Story 22. I ghosted him because I couldn't stand how calm he stayed when I was losing it. Every time I picked a fight, he'd lower his voice. Every time I threatened to leave, he'd say, "If that's what you need." It made me feel like I had no power. So I left to take it back. The first week, I waited for him to crack. For the rage. For the desperate calls. Nothing. Then I got an email from a moving company addressed to me by mistake. My old name, my old apartment. Confirming delivery for Friday. Delivery. My brain snagged. I clicked the invoice attachment, heart hammering. New couch. New bed. New dining table. All being delivered to our address. He hadn't just moved on. He'd replaced the physical evidence I existed. 2 weeks later, I drove by at night like a lunatic. Curtains open, warm light, and there he was in the kitchen cooking. Not ordering takeout. Cooking. A woman sat at the counter, barefoot, sipping wine, laughing at something he said. She wasn't even looking at him like he was a prize. She looked safe. I backed away from the window before they saw me. In my car, my hands shook so hard I couldn't start it. His silence hurt because it denied me the messy proof of love. But the upgrade, the furniture, the routine, her feet on the floor where my shoes used to be, hurt more because it made me realize I wasn't a permanent mark on his life. I was a removable stain. Story 23. I left without a word because I thought he'd always be there. That sounds arrogant, but it felt like a fact at the time. He was loyal in a way I confused with available forever. I treated him like a subscription I could cancel and restart. So I vanished after a stupid argument about nothing. Blocked him. Told my friends I was done. I expected him to fold first. I expected a long apology text that made me feel chosen. Instead, the silence was total. Then I got sick. Not dramatic, just a nasty flu that knocked me flat. I lay in bed, sweating, remembering how he used to bring soup, how he'd tuck the blanket around my feet. I caved and texted from my friend's phone. "Hey, I'm not okay," he replied, polite and distant. "I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you feel better." That was it. No offer. No need anything. The emotional door was closed and he didn't even slam it. He just locked it. The upgrade came later when I finally felt well enough to go outside. I ran into him at a pharmacy. He was buying cold medicine, same aisle, same brand we used to get. But he wasn't buying it for me. A woman stood beside him, cheeks flushed, hair messy, leaning into his shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her automatically. She whispered something, and he kissed her forehead in the exact way he used to kiss mine. I stood there holding my basket like an idiot, realizing the cruel math. His silence hurt because it proved I wasn't special enough to break his boundaries. But his upgrade hurt more because it showed he didn't stop being tender. He just stopped spending it on me. Story 24. I ghosted him right after he lost his job. I know. I'm not proud. The pressure made me feel like I was sinking with him. I wanted a partner who was going places, and in my panic I decided he wasn't. So I left without a conversation because I didn't want to see the look in his eyes. I didn't want to carry that guilt. He didn't chase. Not a single accusation. Not a single call. The silence felt like relief at first, until it started to feel like judgment. 6 months later, I saw the upgrade on a billboard. Literally, a local ad for a startup. His face, his name, founder. I had to pull over because my vision blurred. Founder. The word punched the air out of me. I spiraled and checked online. Articles, interviews, photos of him in meetings, smiling, confident. He looked older, in a good way, like someone who'd survived something and turned it into muscle. Then I saw her in a video clip. She wasn't hanging off him. She was beside him at a launch event, holding the mic for a second, saying a few words with quiet certainty. Everyone clapped. He looked at her like she was the reason he believed in himself. I stared at that look until it burned. His silence hurt because it meant he didn't waste energy begging someone who bailed at his lowest. But his upgrade hurt more because it proved my timing was tragic. I didn't leave a man who was failing. I left a man who was about to become unstoppable. Story 25. I disappeared because I was addicted to the idea of starting over. New city, new friends, new me. He was part of my old life, and I convinced myself growth meant cutting ties clean. So I moved across the country and said nothing. No goodbye. No explanation. I wanted to feel brave. He stayed silent. Completely. A year later, I came back for a wedding and ran into his best friend. We made small talk, and I tried to act casual, like I wasn't itching for information. Is he okay? I asked. His friend's smile was tight. He's great. He learned a lot after you. I laughed awkwardly. Like what? That he doesn't have to keep the door open for people who leave. The words hit me right behind the ribs. At the wedding, I saw the upgrade in real time. He walked in wearing a tailored suit, confident, greeting people. And on his arm was a woman who looked like she'd never once needed to be rescued. She carried herself like she was choosing the room, not hoping it chose her. He spotted me across the dance floor and paused. For a second, I thought the silence would break. I thought maybe we'd have a moment. He nodded once, polite, final, then turned back to her and asked her to dance. She smiled like she trusted him completely. His silence hurt because it made me feel like a chapter he didn't reread. But his upgrade hurt more because it proved my fresh start was just running, and he was the one who actually moved forward. Story 26. I left without a word because he stopped reacting to my tears. That sounds awful, but it's the truth. For years, if I cried, he'd fold. He'd apologize, fix it, hold me. Somewhere along the line, I started using that like a remote control. When it stopped working, I panicked. The last fight, I sobbed and said, "So you don't even care anymore?" He wiped his hands on a towel and said, calmly, "I care. I'm just not negotiating with tears." That sentence made me feel naked. So I vanished. Blocked him everywhere. I told myself he'd come back once the shock wore off. The shock wore off. He didn't come back. 3 weeks later, an envelope showed up at my mom's house. Inside was a check for the portion of the deposit he owed me, and a simple note. "I hope this helps. Take care. No lecture. No guilt. No, I loved you." Just a clean exit that made my stomach turn because it meant he'd practiced. Then came the upgrade. My friend sent me a photo from a small dinner. He was there, smiling, and next to him was a woman with red nails and a soft, unbothered expression. She wasn't watching his face like it might change. She wasn't bracing for a mood swing. She looked like she trusted the air around him. I hated her instantly for something she didn't do. His silence hurt because it forced me to sit with myself instead of a reaction. But his upgrade hurt worse because it proved he didn't become cold. He became selective. And I was the one who trained him to be. Story 27. I ghosted him because I was secretly keeping an ex warm. I didn't want to admit it, so I made my current boyfriend the problem. I need space. I'm overwhelmed. I'm not myself. Then I vanished like a magician. He didn't chase. Not even once. At first I told myself it was fine because I'd gotten what I wanted. I slid back into my ex's orbit like it was destiny. For a month it felt exciting. Late night calls, chemistry, that old chaos. Then my ex did what he always did. Disappeared. I was left holding nothing but my own choices. So I did the most humiliating thing. I went looking for the man I ghosted, like he was my emergency exit. I found him by accident at a grocery store. He was comparing pasta sauces with a woman who laughed at something he whispered. She leaned into his shoulder like it was the most normal thing in the world. He looked up and saw me. No anger, no shock, just a quiet recognition like seeing a car he used to own. I opened my mouth ready to spill excuses. He nodded politely and turned back to her. That was the moment I felt my ego crack. Not because he was winning, but because he wasn't playing. Later, I messaged him anyway from an old email. "I'm sorry. I made a mistake." He replied, "I'm glad you're okay. Please don't contact me again." His silence hurt because it removed the safety net I assumed he'd always be. But his upgrade hurt more because it was proof that he learned. He didn't just find someone new. He found boundaries, and I wasn't worth breaking them for. Story 28. I left without a word after his sister's wedding, because the whole night felt like a preview of a life I wasn't sure I deserved. People kept calling me family and future, and I smiled until my face hurt. On the drive home, he was glowing, talking about how perfect everything was, and all I could think was, I'm about to ruin this man's life. So I vanished the next morning, packed my bags, left the spare key, blocked him. I thought disappearing would spare him the messy explanation that I was drowning in fear. He didn't beg. He didn't blow up. He didn't even show up. A month later, I got a message from his sister. "He asked us not to talk about you. He's focusing on healing." Healing. Like I was an injury. The upgrade came slowly. Photos I couldn't avoid. He started traveling. Not flashy influencer trips. Simple, real ones. Mountains. Museums. Quiet smiles. He looked like someone learning how to breathe again. Then the real punch landed. He attended another wedding. This time, he was the one posting a photo. He was in a suit, and beside him was a woman holding his hand like it was the most natural thing. Her caption wasn't braggy. It was soft. Grateful. I stared at it until my eyes burned because that softness used to be mine. His silence hurt because it meant my fear didn't earn me compassion. But his upgrade hurt more because it proved my disappearance didn't save him from heartbreak. It just redirected him to someone who stayed. Story 29. I ghosted him because he got sober and I couldn't handle it. That's the part people never expect. When he drank, I knew what to expect. Apologies, chaos, promises. When he stopped, the mirror got too clear. Suddenly, my own mess was the loudest thing in the room. One day he said, "I'm trying to build a life I'm proud of," and I realized I wasn't building anything. I was just surviving in circles. So I left. No goodbye. I told myself I was letting him focus. In reality, I didn't want him to see me next to him while he grew. He didn't chase. He didn't even ask why. Months later, I ran into him at a coffee shop, early morning. He was reading a book, relaxed, not the tense, guilty version of him I was used to, and then she walked in, his upgrade, wearing gym clothes, hair in a messy bun, bringing him a smoothie like it was routine. They hugged like people who live in the same calm world. I stood there frozen, realizing the brutal truth. I had expected his sobriety to make him needy. It made him stable. And stability doesn't beg. I finally texted him that night. "You look good." He replied, "Thanks. I feel good." 2 words that sliced. Because I had left thinking I was avoiding pain. But his silence hurt because it meant he didn't need me to heal. And his upgrade hurt more because it showed he chose someone who could live beside him in daylight, not just survive him in the dark. Story 30. I left without a word because I was convinced he'd never find better. That sounds evil, but I didn't think of it like that at the time. I thought I was the fun one, the spark. He was kind and steady and a little awkward. I assumed he'd spend months miserable, maybe years. So I disappeared after a fight, expecting the usual chase. Instead, silence. 2 weeks later, I got a Venmo notification. He'd paid me back for the concert tickets I'd bought months ago. The note said, "Thanks." Nothing else. The pettiness of that kindness made me furious, like he was refusing to owe me anything. Then the upgrade hit in public. I was out with friends at a bar when he walked in, not alone, with a woman who looked like she knew exactly who she was. Clean makeup, sharp laugh, calm eyes. She greeted the bartender by name. She didn't scan the room for threats. She didn't cling. She just existed like confidence was her default. He looked taller next to her. Like her presence unlocked a version of him I never bothered to meet. I watched him laugh, and it was a different laugh, fuller, like it came from his chest instead of his nerves. His silence hurt because it told me my absence wasn't a catastrophe. But his upgrade hurt more because it showed he didn't just find someone. He leveled up into someone else entirely. And I was the only one who didn't see he had that in him.